Hey dudes, my name's Blekoh, and first of all, I just want to say thanks for all the support on the last video about making Kira for the Commodore 64, and also for getting us past the 100 subscriber mark, which I was super excited about. Anyway, I haven't really gone into too much detail about my upcoming Steam game, X Versa, other than that it's a 2D RPG brawler game, and the few clips that I've shown so far. So today, I kinda just wanted to talk about what it is, and what I've already done on it. So even though I've already released a few Steam games, like the super difficult platformer Beardy McStrongarm, and the real-time text adventure horror game Kira, I actually started working on X Versa long before I even thought of those games. In fact, I started back in 2015. You see, I'd always wanted to develop games and had made small games and lots of little tech demos and stuff, but before then I didn't really commit to seeing a game through to its full completion and release, which is something I see a lot of people sort of struggle with as well. So in 2015, I made a goal that I had to release a game on Steam that I was proud of by the time I turned 30. I still have a few years, but it turns out games take a long time to make. But yeah, I needed to make a game, so to do that, I needed some inspiration. Well, my favorite game of all time was Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo. I just really liked the idea of time travel, so I decided I wanted to make my own spin on a sci-fi game centered around time travel. Also, I wanted it to be an RPG, but I wanted it to be a little different, because honestly, there's just so many RPGs with turn-based menu systems, and I definitely feel burnt out on those. So I decided the combat would be a little bit of a mix between a fighter and a brawler game. And when I figured out what the game would be, I worked on the story first, which it's definitely changed a lot in the past few years, but I feel pretty good about it at this point. The real struggle began when I started working on the art for the game. I'm a full-time software engineer, so programming games comes really easy, especially since I've been programming for such a long time. But I never really spent time to learn how to make digital art, or pixel art, or really any kind of art. But I had the characters I wanted to make in my head, so I worked on making the pixel art for them. And at the time, I'd been replaying lots of Super Nintendo games, so I started with a style from the Super Nintendo. I ended up making all the main playable characters and their animations first, and then worked on some different tile sets so I could start building out the game. I reached a point though where I just felt like I wasn't going to be happy with the end result, especially if it was going to take up to a couple years to make.
I know.
What?
I know what it feels like to try to write a song and it just comes out shit.
So that's why I decided to put X Versa on hold so I could work on my skills and come back to it when I'm ready. So fast forward, I ended up making Beardy McStrongarm, which was only ever going to be a game for me to learn how to make pixel art, and also to learn the process of releasing a game on Steam. It's definitely a crazy game, since I made pretty much the whole thing while streaming, and adding in things from what people had to say in chat. It was fun, but also kind of stressful, and maybe the end result didn't come out all that great. But I definitely learned a lot, and felt a lot more comfortable doing 2D art and animations. After that, I also made Kuro, which is just a fun little project to work through. So I worked on my art skills for the past few years, and I felt ready to go back to X Versa. I decided to pretty much scrap all the work that I had done before, because even though I loved the Super Nintendo, I wanted to make a more modern feeling 2D pixel art game. I worked through some character concept art so that I could go from higher res concept art to pixel art, and with that, I was able to remake a few of my characters in a higher resolution pixel art. I also worked through lots of iterations for the characters and had people vote on their favorites, so I could get a better idea of what a group of people like, rather than just me looking at it. Alright, so I had a few animated characters, but from what I've learned working on my previous games, building the game goes a lot faster if I plan out the programming systems for how the entire game will work up front, and how all the objects and their inheritance works. This is pretty important for an RPG, because there will be lots of objects and lots of assets to deal with. So these past few months, I've really just been programming basically libraries or packages for the game. These can be reused in future games, so they're definitely valuable to have. I've already gone over a few packages in other videos like my depth sorting package and my animation package. A big thing that took a while was working on a package for using different inputs, like game controllers, the keyboard, and even custom inputs, which I have plans for in the future. Also, it allows for remappable controls, so all the controls can be configured in my game, which I think is pretty important for multiplayer fighting games. I spent even longer creating a GUI system, which allows for creating custom GUIs that can have submenus and components docked recursively, as well as completely customize them, sort of like CSS for HTML. There are already GUI systems for GameMaker Studio 2 on the Yo-Yo Games asset browser, but specifically, I wanted GUIs that worked well with different inputs like controllers and keyboard, besides using the mouse, because ultimately, one day I'd like to release a game on a console, and they don't have mice. With the input system and a GUI library, I designed all the settings menus, since it's a lot easier to design all the settings in the beginning instead of retroactively trying to control them after the game is far along. This let me even use the configuration mapping feature of my controller library to remap controls. Also, because this is an RPG, and there will be a lot of dialogue, I created a dialogue package. This one is important to get right in the beginning because it will end up being really cumbersome to change in a later stage of the game. What I sort of think is cool about how I did this one is that I built in a translation system to it, so I can already support different languages and it'll be easy to add languages later on. In fact, even the text in all of my menus are part of this translation, so to switch back and forth, all I have to do is select which language I want in the settings and everything changes immediately. So those are the big ones, but I also created a physics system that even supports curved collisions in different directions, a transition system for when players swap between different rooms, and the entity system. Some packages I didn't need to write, because there are already good options available, like the lighting system and the camera system. It might not sound like much, but getting all these packages made is a huge step, and will make creating the rest of the game much easier. In fact, this past week, I finally hit a major milestone and was able to test out the multiplayer functionality of the game with the help of my two brothers. We were able to join 3 players over Steam and correctly map controllers to each player, which is pretty sweet. So that's kind of what I've done so far. It's why the clips I've shown are normally just in the same lab room, because I didn't spend too much time creating the world without doing the important upfront work that if I hadn't done, I'd probably just have to redo it anyway. But at this point, I'm at a good place where I can start moving on to creating more of the world, which I've definitely been looking forward to. So expect to see that in the near future videos. Anyway dudes, that's basically it. I'll try to post a new update every now and then so that you guys can follow along the progress of X Versa. And of course, I'll do other videos too about other projects, like the Commodore 64 game. So yeah, see ya dudes!